The Baltimore Ravens should want to play the Kansas City Chiefs in week 1 of the 2024 season. We talk about why and so much more coming up next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, coming to you from the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Thank you so much, as always, for being here and making Locked On Ravens your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube, where you can like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn notifications on. Also, in audio form, where you can, again, turn notifications on, subscribe over there, and follow along wherever you get your favorite podcast. We're 5 days a week here on Locked On Ravens, Monday through Friday, plus bonus content will be going live on Wednesday after the NFL schedule is released. So we'll do a Ravens NFL reaction stream. That'll be fun. But Monday through Friday, regularly scheduled programming is at 6 a.m. Eastern time. News, analysis, updates, all Baltimore Ravens centric here. So tell a friend, tell a family member, we have them covered. And you covered, of course, 5 days a week here on Locked On Ravens. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Another week of Ravens content. The Ravens still, this is the lull period of the offseason now, as I mentioned there a couple seconds ago. This still has some excitement. This week does, as the NFL schedule coming out on Wednesday. That's when it's expected to be released. So, of course, we already know the Ravens' opponents, right? Who they're going to play. We don't know when they're going to play, though. Are they going to play a certain team in week 1, a certain team in week 18? What's the primetime situation going to look like? So today I want to start with the schedule, and then we'll kind of move into other Ravens topics over the course of the show. First, I want to talk, and actually I wanted to do this topic on Friday, but Isaiah Likely made some very bold and spicy comments on Thursday. So, of course, we had to talk about that mainly on Friday. By the way, if you haven't checked that out, highly recommend that one. But I wanted to talk about, to me, I've been very strong in my opinion on this. If you've been listening to me for the last week or so, maybe even longer than that, I've had this opinion. The Ravens should want the Chiefs in week 1. I think they should. There's no reason to shy away from it. And I wanted to dedicate part of an episode to it, at least the beginning part of an episode to it. So we're going to be talking about why the Ravens should want the Chiefs. We'll also get into a couple of other schedule-related things in that segment as well. Then in the second part of the show, I kind of want to move into, it was another Isaiah Likely comment, not necessarily as bold or as spicy as some of his other ones, but he talked about how explosive the offense can be and all the weapons that Baltimore has. So we're going to be talking about how explosive can this Baltimore offense be. And then we're going to get into Tez Walker a little bit, the Ravens' 4th-round pick out of North Carolina. There have been a lot of comparisons for him recently, a lot of conversation around him. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what his role can be and how he can impact the game as a rookie, and if he even is going to have a role this season. So let's get into it. Let's talk about I guess you can call this a spicy topic, why the Ravens should want the Chiefs in week 1. Now, we all know the Ravens are going to Arrowhead at some point this year. They're playing the Chiefs away at Arrowhead Stadium. Never an easy place to play, regardless if you get them week 1, week 4, week 7, week 18. Doesn't matter when you get them. Always a tough environment to play. And those are the defending champs back to back, right? Mahomes, 3 rings. Andy Reid, 3 rings. Kelsey, 3 rings. You want to go on and on, you can. But for the Ravens, this, if they get them on opening night, and of course, for those who don't know, if you play the defending champs on the opening week of the season, that is going to be the Thursday night, the opening game of the season. So there's a primetime element to that. Sure, there's some pressure that comes along with that. But to me, if people are saying, oh, well, I'd rather face them in December when maybe some injuries hit or when the Ravens find their groove, you have to get through Kansas City at some point, right? We can go through particulars, and we will over the course of the next couple of days, of what certain times in the schedule could mean for playing good teams, playing bad teams. Like there were some levels of advantage and disadvantage, but to me, it's like, why do you not want to make a statement, right? Why do you not want to go to Arrowhead opening night? You see the Chiefs, all the celebration, defending champs, this, that, and the other. To me, I think that would motivate, right? You have Roquan Smith, who's been a heck of a leader. Obviously, Lamar Jackson's taken on a much bigger leadership role as the years have gone on there. I think that those two in particular, and obviously the whole team, especially those who are still from last year's squad, they'll look at that. They'll see the bright lights and the celebration and all of the fanfare that goes with that and say, that really could have been us. And I'm sure some of them will say, man, if one thing went this way or that way, or if something happened, whatever you want to say, it could have been them. It really could have. And I think it could have been. And we've talked about the AFC Championship game. I'm not going to get into that right now because we've talked about it for so long. But I think that would be some extra motivation for this Ravens squad. I also think that it'd be interesting to see how both Baltimore and Kansas City match up. And at this point, week one, you're hoping, and obviously knock on wood, you hear me knocking there, knock on wood, that both teams would be healthy, right? Obviously preseason injuries happen, training camp injuries happen, but I want to see what a healthy Baltimore Ravens team looks like against a healthy Kansas City Chiefs team. Week one, rosters as they are. The Chiefs have made big additions. They bring in Marquise Brown. They draft Xavier Worthy in the first round. Now they have also had some losses, right? L'Jarius Sneed is now in Tennessee. So that's a big hole in their secondary they're going to have to fill. Obviously, the big story around Kansas City last year was, the offense isn't the typical Chiefs offense that we're accustomed to. It was really the defensive group that was, I don't want to say carrying, but the offense definitely needed that defense to pull them along a little bit. Whereas for Baltimore, I think it was much more balanced where, that defense was all time. The Ravens defense last year was historic. But the offense still was able to find their groove in the regular season. The issue is that they didn't carry it over week to week in the playoffs, where against Houston it was awesome, but Kansas City was some sort of... So honestly, you know what? Another thing is I just want to see what it looks like when the Ravens run the ball against Kansas City, right? It's going to be the freshest Derrick Henry will be all year. It'll be the freshest the Ravens and the Chiefs will be all season. Two juggernauts in the AFC. I think for the NFL's sake, you might as well just schedule those two, and it'd be a bang to the season. You start the year with a bang, and whether you have Baltimore and Kansas City play week one, again, any week they play, it's going to draw an audience. It's going to be that. But I just feel like Baltimore and Kansas City is that good of a matchup. And if I'm Baltimore, I'm not running from Kansas City because I know that's who I need to go through. I know that is the team. You can talk about all the other teams in the AFC, teams improving and how the AFC is going to be different. And it will be. The NFL is different year to year. It's not like the exact year is going to play out the way it did and the Ravens will have an opportunity to rematch against Kansas City in the AFC Championship game. Every year is different. Maybe they do, but we're not going to know that because it's an entirely different season. But to me, if I'm Baltimore, sure, other teams are coming for you, right? The Ravens were the one seed last year. Teams are coming for that one seed. But if I'm Baltimore, you worry about the teams below you, sure, right? You say, all right, this team can be a threat. This team can be a threat. But you really look and you circle Kansas City and say, that is the team. That is the team that we need to go through. That's what I'm saying to myself every single week where, it's 1 week at a time, focus on your opponent. But you know that where you want to go, you got to be able to beat Kansas City, and I think week one would be a test in that. So I think that it'd be great. Now, there have been some rumors I've seen. The Orioles moved their game on, I think it was September 8th, if I'm not mistaken, but around week one in that timeline, they moved it. So there's been speculation that maybe the Ravens will open on Sunday night or in prime time in some way, shape, or form. We'll talk about primetime games, and we'll do that more so tomorrow and highlight that a little bit more. But I do think the NFL should give the Ravens 5 primetime games. I certainly think Kansas City should be one of those primetime games. And look, if we're talking about the Chiefs, you have to respect them, right? You have to respect their back-to-back champs. You have to respect Mahomes and Reed and all those guys. But Baltimore can beat Kansas City with the proper game plan, first of all. Right? Execution is another one. Everything combined, they didn't have that. And credit to the Chiefs in the championship game. They did enough to win the game. But that doesn't mean that they're necessarily invincible, right? In fact, no NFL team is invincible. So if I'm the Ravens, I want that test right out of the gate, right? It's coming regardless, whether you play at the beginning of the season, the middle of the season, or the end of the year. If I'm the Ravens, I say, let's go. Let's dive into this. And Isaiah Likely talked about it. He said, look, last time the Ravens were underdogs, San Francisco, and look what happened. So he said his team's going to be standing 10 toes ready for whoever comes and whenever anything happens. And I think that's the mentality of almost like, revenge season or whatever you want to call it, because You can talk about revenge on a certain team here or the storyline with Patrick Queen in Pittsburgh or whatever, but you want to talk about revenge, it's Kansas City. That's the team. It's biggest matchup of the year, regardless of when it happens, right? If it's week one, your biggest matchup happens in week one, right? Divisional matchups are huge. Other matchups are big. I'm not saying that no other matchup is huge for Baltimore this year, but Kansas City is your number one. And I say go in. If they give it to the Ravens in week one, they're not going to be afraid. They shouldn't be afraid. But at the same time, you got to respect Kansas City and understand that we're potentially looking at a rematch in the AFC Championship game because that's how good the Chiefs are. And obviously for the Ravens, we know how good they can be as well. Coming up in the second part of the show, we're going to be moving into how explosive Baltimore's offense can be. So be sure to stay tuned. Got a lot to get to here on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has it covered. With over 122 million parts, your number one ride or die will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. All the parts you need are the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Also, all exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. We're back for our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still talking with you here on this Monday. Again, really appreciate everybody being here with me, making Locked On Ravens your first listen each and every day. Be sure to subscribe video form and audio form as well. It's the same show. So if you want to watch one day, listen another day, you're not missing out on any content. Let's get into the Ravens offense a little bit. Obviously, talking about Kansas City, the offense certainly played a very big role in why the Ravens weren't able to win that game, especially the game plan. Also some execution in there as well, right? It's not one thing all in its entirety. It's a lot of things combined into one. But obviously the biggest part of that being the Ravens and their lack of running the football. Now, when you're talking about explosive, I think in today's NFL, a lot of people just automatically shift their focus to, oh, explosive means throwing the ball 60 yards and getting all these deep passing touchdowns and on these screens, explosive touchdown. Teams can run the ball and have explosive offenses. We've literally seen it with the Ravens and their explosive offense. Cleveland's been a team that's run the ball a lot. Nick Chubb and company, they've had an explosive offense. San Francisco and their rushing offense, it's been explosive. So I don't like the narrative of explosive means passing offense. The Ravens have elements of their passing attack that have been very explosive, but a lot of their explosion has come in the running game and the ability for them to rip off big gains, score at will. Those have been really big things for them in the past few years. And Isaiah Likely, again, we talked about him on Friday's episode, some spicy comments. This one, not necessarily to the level of his other spicy comments, but he was asked about Baltimore's offensive weapons, Baltimore running some 2 tight end sets. And he said, quote, not only do you have Lamar in the backfield, you have Derrick Henry, you have all-pro Mark Andrews, you also have our great wide receivers like Zay and Bateman, then you also have me. And talked about defenses are going to have to figure it out for all these weapons across the board. And, you know, for every single player, he said it's electric. You have to worry about anybody, any point in time in the offense going the distance. And that part is true because in multiple different ways, you have so many different players that can do so many different things, but still give you the end result, which is explosiveness and touchdowns and all the crazy NFL highlights that people love. And to me, it comes in so many different ways because obviously you start with Lamar. He's the hub of the offense, the center of the offense. And what obviously makes him so explosive is the fact that he can do what he does with both his arm and with his legs. He gives you the explosion in both areas of the game. And that to me, we know how crazy good he is as a runner. We know what he can do, the jukes, the speed to the outside. And obviously we've talked a lot about his weight transformation. He said it himself. He was 230 in 2022. Then he was 215 in 2023. And now he's right around 205. But it goes so far beyond that, in my opinion. Now, an element of the offense that does have to get better, an element of Lamar's game that has to get more consistent, is the deep ball. For him, the deep ball accuracy, for the receivers being able to track those deep balls. We saw a couple of times where, yeah, sure, you put it on Lamar for not having a good throw, but other times you put it on the receiver for not being able to bring in the ball. It was both things, right? I'm not going to excuse Lamar from all criticism. I'm also not going to excuse the wide receivers from all criticism. You got to be hitting on all cylinders. And I think for the last couple of seasons, the Ravens' deep passing attack has been a lot more inconsistent than people have liked, and then the Ravens have needed it to be. You need that take the top off element to where if Lamar's missing on those throws or receivers are misreading balls or just straight up dropping them, defenses are going to respect it less. If you can work the play action and hit on those deep shots, especially early in games or even early in the season, just for a whole season perspective, it's going to make defenses tend to creep back on those play actions. But then if you have the threat of, let's get into it, Derrick Henry now, who, look, we can all say Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins were really good in the Ravens offense when they were healthy. Obviously, J.K. his rookie season, he was balling out. Gus Edwards was Mr. Consistent for the most part for the Ravens over the course of his tenure with the team. But Derrick Henry just gives you a couple of added elements, I guess, that those guys didn't give you. He's a massive human being. He has that underrated speed to him. He's super hard to bring down. And to me, he's a player that works so well off of Lamar Jackson in multiple different ways because defenses have to respect both of those guys. And so when you're talking about bringing in heavy personnel to try to maybe bring down a Derrick Henry, well, Lamar can beat you to the outside, and we know what he can do when it comes to juking guys out if they don't have the elusivity. But then if you try to bring in the speed to counter Lamar, it's, well, we know what Derrick Henry can do one-on-one with those smaller guys, truck them over. So defenses are going to have to find a perfect balance of how do you stop those two guys. If that's working for you, if you have your running game be a really effective part of your offense, and look, Baltimore's had that for years. Why would that stop this year with a better running back? Once that opens up for you and you're starting to rip off long gains, when you start to use that play action, well, teams are going to start creeping up towards the line to say, all right, we really have to get a beat and burst through this hole to make sure that we can get Derrick Henry down to stop the bleeding in the run game. Well, then Lamar tucks that ball and takes it from Derrick Henry, and then you work the deep game. You work the middle of the field with Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. You figure out how to use those guys together, and that to me is a huge storyline this year, honestly. We're talking about how do the Ravens use Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely together. I teased this a bit on the Ryan Ripken show. I'll say it here because I still believe it too. I just haven't had the chance to. I think a bold prediction of mine is that if the Ravens do this right, if the Ravens can effectively use Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely together into tight end sets and get those guys their touches, get them their catches, their targets, I believe that by the end of the 2024 season, Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely will both be regarded league-wide, not just in Ravens circles, league-wide, as two top 10 tight ends. Both of them in the top tight end conversation, top 10 guys. That's how effective both of them can be. They're both tight end ones, far and away tight end ones, when they have the lion's share of the tight end targets. But can you effectively maybe move Isaiah Likely around? Even Mark Andrews. We've seen Mark Andrews line up on the outside and beat stud corners like A.J. Terrell for big gains. You can line those guys up. You can also use them in line if you want, but you can line up Mark Andrews in line. You can put Isaiah Likely in the slot. It's the versatility of an offense that makes everything so big. And when you talk about heavy personnel, it's not only about the deep passing game, working off of that play action, as I just talked about. You can work the middle of the field. Mark Andrews was one of the best middle of the field players in the entire NFL. You use that in his skill set. You can use Isaiah Likely as well. And then safeties have to creep up. You got to match up because, again, like slot corners against Isaiah Likely, slot corners generally are smaller. You can put other guys in the slot, but then that just messes up your personnel packages. So it's teams trying to figure out the perfect balance. We haven't even talked about the receiver group, which I know is not the best in the league, but Zay Flowers showed why he has the potential to be even better and be a wide receiver one in this league. Bateman hopefully is going to have a bounce back year this year with a bigger role. Nelson Aguilar can give you those clutch catches we saw. We'll talk about Tez Walker in a couple minutes here, maybe what his role can be. So it's about the Ravens finding ways to utilize their players in the effective ways. They have a lot of guys now with primary skill sets that mesh really well together. But can you take what you've learned in not only year one of Todd Monken's offense, but now you're entering year two of a Todd Monken offense where we always knew that it was going to be a little bit of a struggle early on. Monken and the team finding their identity. What is it going to look like in game situations? You have a full year of that under your belt now. So I expect more explosion, and I expect a more consistent offense out of the gate than what we saw last year, because now you've had time if you're Todd Monken to acclimate to your team. Lamar Jackson, all those guys there last year, more time to kind of figure out who Todd Monken is. What does he like to do? And vice versa with Monken. So it's going to be, I think, a better year for the offense consistency-wise, and that hopefully will lead to a lot better things in the playoffs, particularly the AFC Championship game for Baltimore. Just more consistency overall also during the regular season. Coming up, though, we will talk about Devontez Walker, what his role could be for the Ravens during his rookie season. Stay tuned. A lot to get to on Locked On Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big one of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. So for the NBA playoffs, I'm a big Denver Nuggets guy. It's 2-1 right now in the Western Conference semifinals. I'm recording this episode before the game tonight, so hopefully Denver can move it to 2-2, but we're going to see what ends up happening there. So if you want to bet Nikola Jokic, Anthony Edwards throughout the whole series, you can do that as well. Visit FanDuel.com/lockdown to make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. And this show is brought to you by DK Law Group. When you need a law firm, do you want the legal runaround, or would you rather have a no-nonsense approach? Well, you get the latter with DK Law Group. DK Law Group is a Maryland-based law firm who is redefining the legal process with their modern approach. DK Law Group specializes in real estate law, estate planning, business law, and family law. They're tech savvy. They treat clients like family, and they focus on keeping your legal solutions simple. DK Law Group is a woman-led firm with Diana Kahn at the helm. Diana has been called an unparalleled legal expert by some. One of the things you'll quickly notice with DK Law Group is their transparent pricing. They believe in clarity and cost and no one left in limbo. DK Law Group knows that speed is key. By leveraging technology, DK Law Group streamlines the process to serve you better and faster. Contact DK Law Group today at dklawmd.com. Locked On listeners can call today to schedule a free 30-minute consultation when you mention the tagline Empowering Legacies. We're back. Our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you. Again, appreciate everybody for tuning in today. Be sure to subscribe and follow along video form and audio form for 5 days a week, plus more of Ravens content. Really excited for the stream we're going to be doing on Wednesday, whenever. I know there are leaks throughout the day. I'm going to wait until the actual official schedule is released, so it'll probably be more so around like in the 7 to 9 p.m. frame, right? Could be 7, could be 8, could be 9, not exactly sure yet. But even if there are leaks throughout the day, I'll make sure to be safe, because leaks have been wrong plenty of times before. So I just want to make sure that we are talking about the accurate information, the most accurate information. And of course, what's the best way to make sure that it's accurate? We wait for the official announcement. So we're probably going to do that, but still really excited for that. Be sure to tune in on Wednesday evening/night whenever that schedule comes out. But let's now talk about Devontez Walker a little bit. A lot of people seem to be very, very excited. I am too excited about Devontez Walker, because he's a player that fits the mold of what Baltimore needed, which is a bigger bodied player that can come down with contested catches. But obviously, one of the allures for Walker in his game is the deep ball, him being a deep threat. And the fact is already he's getting some comparisons to a former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver. I've seen the Anquan Bolden things here and there, but the big one has been Torrey Smith. I've seen Torrey Smith, and obviously we've gotten multiple people commenting, big people commenting that, oh, he could be Torrey Smith potentially. He has some of those skills. So the similarities between Torrey and Devontez Walker, both ran a 4.36 40-yard dash. Torrey Smith more so in the 6 foot to 6'1" range, whereas Devontez Walker is more like 6'1" to 6'2". But both were speedsters. Now, Smith could, he had the back shoulder where he'd turn his body. Like, he had those awesome catches. Devontez Walker can do that too. So I think it's really intriguing to have a player that you can now send, maybe not necessarily seeing as many Zay Flowers deep routes or Rashad Bateman deep routes. Maybe you have a specific role for Devontez Walker. And I think Baltimore should have a specific role for Devontez, just because of the fact that he's different. He's different than what the Ravens have had on their roster in recent seasons, in just figuring out what they needed was, oh, look, you have a bunch of these smaller receivers that can run routes and have some of these really exciting guys. I mean, look, Zay's one of the better route runners in the league already. Rashad Bateman is an incredible route runner, despite, some of the things that people are saying about him right now. But you just need a guy sometimes you can throw the ball up to and say, hey, go get this thing. And I think they tried that with Miles Boykin. Didn't really work out. I think he played a lot smaller. He was huge. He was in that like 6'3", 6'4" range. He didn't play like that, though. Tez Walker plays honestly bigger than Tez Walker plays like he's Miles Boykin size, and he's only a little bit smaller. Miles Boykin played like he was Zay Flowers' size. He didn't play big, and there was a bunch of miscommunication with Boykin. They've tried to bring in guys that can fill that void. And look, some people are saying, well, yeah, they have Mark Aarons and Isaiah Likely. Those are their big body contested catch guys, and that's fine. They are, but you want to have somebody else in the wide receiver room. And obviously those guys are in the tight end room, not the wide receiver room. So do I expect a huge role for Tez Walker off the bat? I mean, probably not, but he will give you, it's almost like Deontay Hardy. Now, I think Tez Walker by the end of the season will have a bigger role than Deontay Hardy on offense. Hardy obviously was brought in more to be the special teams returner guy with all the new rules and everything. He was an all-pro many years ago. Well, not many, but his first year, I think 2019, that was. So you're going to use him on special teams, but there's still going to be some packages you can use Hardy in. For Walker, I think that he is a player that you can still move around the formation a little bit and do what you want with him. But we know Zay's ahead of him. We know Rashad Bateman's ahead of him. We know Nelson Aguilar is ahead of him. So to me, I think that unless Tyler Wallace goes and balls out and has an incredible training camp in preseason, that's the only way I can see him moving into that role, the fourth role. I think Tez Walker probably starts as the fourth wide receiver. And honestly, I don't really know the future of Tyler Wallace right now. He might be a cut candidate if the Ravens want to add somebody else, or maybe an undrafted rookie free agent wide receiver does their thing. And if they're keeping six guys, that could make Wallace the odd man out. It's going to be really intriguing with Wallace and just how the Ravens decide to utilize him and do what they do there. But for Walker, you can send him on the deep routes and he'll come down with the contested catches. I mean, I'm not expecting anything super crazy unless injuries go crazy in that wide receiver room, which obviously we hope does not happen. But I think it's an exciting pick, somebody that I think we'll see a big jump from year 1 to year 2 with. So that's getting into next year, but still will have some level of a role during his rookie season. So I'm excited for Tez Walker. I think everybody gets excited for receivers in Baltimore, especially with just some of the rotten luck the team has had, especially with drafting and developing their own guys. So the traits are there. The potential is there. Just a matter of how it will actually unfold for him. That's all I have for you here today, though, on Locked on Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. Come up tomorrow. More Ravens content as always. So be sure to subscribe, follow along, video form, audio form. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked on Ravens.